Good evening friends, you are most welcome to Civil Affairs channel. Here we will discuss mane004, Social Anthropology, Maan IGNOU, Gender and Society. And our topic is Feminist Psychoanalytical Thought in France. Let us begin the topic. Jacques Lacan's work has been extraordinarily influential among many French feminists, but not only among them. Central to Lacan's theorization is the idea of the symbolic order. For Lacan's entry into language is important. It is crucial to how we become subjects in society. Reality becomes intelligible only in and through language. The symbolic is the term Lacan uses to indicate how reality becomes meaningful through the mediation of language. Some of the feminist thinkers affiliated with French psychoanalytical thought include Luz Irigaray, Julia Kristeva, Sarah Kaufman, Catherine Clement, and Helene Sixus. They ask foundational questions about the nature of feminine subjectivity. We shall stay a while with some of the modes of inquiry initiated by Luz Irigaray. Irigaray critiques Freud's conceptualization of women as the other of man, as the other of who complements him. Irigaray calls this the old dream of symmetry, the old dream where there is imagined to be a mirror-like specular, in Irigaray's term, opposition between men and women. The symbolic, the intimate, and the social are closely interwoven. Thus, we find that women get figured in language and in men's desire in very similar ways. Irigaray coins a term to signal this homosexuality. By this term, she hopes to indicate that the symbolic and the social are made as in order of the same homo and as the order of man homi. Because man serves as its reference point, it entirely ignores relation among women, especially between mothers and daughters. Women become merely the medium through which men ally with other men. By obliterating the mother, the women, men are able to forge vertical, hierarchical, and horizontal associational relations with each other. In her own work, Irigaray seeks to critique the homosexual order. She does this so as to make a feminine subjectivity possible. Such a project, she believes, cannot be successful either by simply reversing sexual difference or by asserting differences. Both these will only succeed in representing women in terms of already existing symbolic order. In other words, women will become intangible only according to the framework already set by homosexuality. Both these modes would therefore only strengthen the symbolic, not disrupt it. In order to challenge this order, we need to find a language for feminine subjectivity and of sexual difference. The use of language is therefore a political act for Irigaray. It is a mode of complexly reshaping the symbolic. Most psychoanalytical inquiry does not fit comfortably with either the biological conceptualizations of sex or the sociological formulations of gender. Consequently, they complicate the sex or gender debate in feminism. These theories traverse complex ways in which gender becomes embodied, social, and experienced as real. Next heading is literary theories. Feminist attention to literature and to language has moved along multiple directions. We have just seen the crucial place that theorists like Irigaray gives a language give to language. As you read about Marxist, post-colonial, Dalit feminists, you will without doubt find evidence of how they reshape literary criticism and theory. Beside these, there are also feminists who draw upon schools of thought such as semiotics, structuralism, post structuralism, and so on. As with the order modes of inquiry, we will confine only to the broad outlines of this theoretical initiative, one could say with some degree of truth that feminist literary theory began with the realization that representations of women in literature affect the socialization of women. There are many feminist critics who would hesitate to see literature and other narratives like films or instance as having direct and immediate effect on lives. For example, if a popular novel or film depicts a man beating his wife, it does not necessarily follow that there will automatically be an increase in domestic violence. Even such critics, however, are likely to argue that representations of women have certain discernible consequences. The belief that derives this criticism is that dominant representations in society hold up certain acceptable modes of being gendered. If heroines are customarily childlike, wide eyed in their innocence, helpless in the face of adversity, prefer to stay at home and leave all that is heroic and essential to the man in their lives, then such images would strongly indicate that these are the appropriate ways of being feminine and masculine in the society. Activity 5, following upon some of the feminist initiatives mentioned here. Imagine a field which you might go to study as an anthropologist. Speculate on how you can seek out and find women's voice and text. Do you expect all women's text to necessarily critique patriarchy? What are some of the strategies you could use to reveal the ways in which gender is represented in the text? But feminist criticism does not confine itself only to uncovering stereotypes and challenging negative representations of women. It is also engages in a range of other critical exercises. For one, it analyzes the way in which patriarchy works in narratives and textual words. Beside this, feminist work seeks to recover women's voice and stories either by excavating texts that have long been ignored or by retrieving voices that have been forgotten. Feminist literary theory is also involved in revaluing, revaluing marginalized and belittled text authored by women. It has not only reclaimed such texts but have also analyzed them to uncover their complexities and the possibilities which they offer. While seeking ignored women's voices, feminists have recognized the need to look beyond the genres forms that are commonly accepted as literary. They have thus demonstrated the theoretical qualities of genres as diverse as oral narratives. Rheo- rhetorical, that is not theoretical, rhetorical qualities of genres as diverse as oral narratives, diaries, and songs. Let's repeat this. They have thus demonstrated the rhetorical qualities of genres as diverse as oral narratives, diaries, and songs. They have also found it productive to revision the history of mainstream genres. Take the novel in the Anglo American context as an example. When we read about the emergence of the novel, we scarcely even learn that in its early formative years, most of the writers of novels were in fact women. The novel had not then been a respectable literary genre. In fact, it was seen as trashy. Women who wrote this unsanctified genre for an audience comprising extensively of women served to incubate and foster this form. Today, the novel is, of course, one of the most robust of literary genres. All these ventures serve to make reading a political act. They also provoke a radical critique of the institutions of literature. Feminists have found the canons of literature, the great texts that constitute literary traditions, to be parochial. They have challenged literary canons for being predominantly a listening of men's authored text. Feminist criticism does not merely seek the token insertion of a few women authored texts into existing canons. Instead, they promote a thoroughgoing overhaul of patriarchal attitudes and assumptions. They seek to make evident the ideological base of supposedly neutral male stream literary institutions. Theory of gender performativity. Another mode of theorization that has become very influential in is the theory of gender performativity. In her groundbreaking book Gender Trouble 1990, Judith Butler challenges both essentialist and constructivist theorization of gender. She argues that even those feminists who rubbished the idea of biology as destiny failed to problematize the idea of two genders. Rather, as we have noted before, they tended to see the genders men and women as culturally manufactured from male and female bodies. In other words, even these feminists did not seek to question the supposed reality and truth of sex. One of the most provocative theses that Butler proposed pertains to the idea of the sex. She argues that sex is not the primary ground from which gender proceeds. On the contrary, it is the effect of gender. This radically revises initial feminist theorization. For now, it would seem that it is the idea of gender that produces the notion of sex and not the other way around. In other words, such a formulation would ask, how do we know where we have to look for sex? Which part of our biology is sex? How can we perceive sex if there is not already an idea of gender that prompted us into such an examination? Butler would argue that it is gender that constructs the notion of sex. It constructs it in such a manner that sex appears as the prediscursive and natural ground for itself, that is gender. In Butler's own word, the performance of gender retroactively produces the effect of some true and abiding feminine essence or disposition. Moreover, gender is produced by ritualized repetition of conventions, and this ritual is socially compelled in part by the force of a compulsory heterosexuality. 1997. What then is gender? Clearly, gender is not a cultural expression of a biological core, it is the effect of social performances. What does it mean to see gender as a performance? Butler draws the term performativity from linguistics and the theory of language. According to J. L. Austin, in a performative utterance, the utterance is the action that is performed. A classic example he gives is when someone says, I name this ship the Queen Elizabeth. What is happening here? Such an utterance does not describe the person doing something, like, for instance, an utterance such as I am running does, which describes an action I do. A performative utterance like the one above does what it refers to, that is, it is in the very utterance that a ship gets named. There is no inward performance. The outward performance is all that we have. It is this idea that Butler brings to the idea of gender with dizzying implication. In Gender Trouble, Butler argues that gender is an external performance without a corresponding internal fact, that there is an internal automatic, yeah, atomical sex that causes gender is a fiction, and this fiction is produced by gendered performances. It must be noted that performativity is not the same as acting performance in the theatre. Butler clarifies that there is no stable subject that self consciously acts gendered roles as actors do in theatre. It is in the very act of performing gender that we become persons. Judith Butler's work clearly signals an epistemic shift, a shift in our knowledge of what is gender and what it means to be a woman. But it is not only epistemology that preoccupies Butler. She is also concerned with the politics and the ethics of gender. She holds that gender is a norm. It regulates how subjects must be. It also serves to exclude and abnormalize those that do not conform. This is primarily done through the heteronormative matrix, the norm by which there is believed to be two sexes or genders, men, women, that are seen as companions and partners to each other. Heteronormativity determines that only certain bodies which are appropriately and heterosexually gendered matter, others are deemed not to matter. These others are not seen as subjects at all, they are merely the subject or object or abject. However, according to Butler, this sex gender regime is constitutionally unstable. This is evidenced by the fact that the performance of gender cannot simply be a one time event, sometime, or something that can be done once and thereby accomplished and held secure forever after. On the other hand, one must continually and constantly reiterate gender performance. One must continually identify with the norm and repudiate the abject, but this also makes it foundationally unstable because no two iterations can ever be the same. In this, Butler sees the possibility for change. Change is what is inevitable with each iteration. These allow for multiple, not just two, articulation of gender. They yield the subversive potential of the gender confusion and the gender trouble and of general trouble. This idea offers us a corridor to move into queer theory, a theory which seeks to reveal the falseness of heteronormativity claims to naturalness. Queer theory. Queer theory, the term queer started out as a word to abuse homosexuals, but it has now been adopted as a coalition term for all those who wish to show the hegemony of heterosexuality and to demonstrate the hollowness of its claims. It is also a placeholder for the theoretical initiatives that have emerged from lesbians and gay studies, but queer theory is not just another name for lesbian gay studies. It is different from the latter in that queer theory is not based upon any one stable identity. It even calls into questions identities like men and women by inserting issues of drag, cross dressing, hermaphroditism, gender ambiguity, transgender, and transsexuality. The idea of being queer challenges the easy fit that is usually assumed between sex, gender, and sexual desire, where the one leads seamlessly into the other. One of the strongest criticism against queer studies is that it has suddenly become a sexy and fashionable mode of inquiry that has been adopted by funding agencies, academic institutions, publishing industries, etc. Many suspect that it has become conceptually and politically moribund. There are others who hold that queer resists the idea of being an identity category. There are others who hold that queer resists the idea of being an identity category. Unlike identities, queer is not self evident and already known, it is a category that is constantly in formation. Summary at the last we will discuss. In this unit, we have examined some of the theoretical approaches to gender. We have examined how each of these theories understand gender and related to the idea of sex. We have seen that these theories take a wide a range of concerns and focus on the individual and institution and the interactional or a combination of the above. It is time now to revisit the question that we started out with. Why do we need to theorize gender? From what we have traversed in this chapter so far, it would be evident that precisely because gender permeates our lives in various ways, it becomes difficult for us to perceive it in its details and in its complexities. It is often difficult to see the web of connection and social formation in which gender exists. We need theories in order to help us uncover these and also to think about how they affect individual and collective lives. We have also seen that our ways of thinking about gender may itself be caught up in existing power knowledge system. Theories help us step back from our common sense and examine our automatic and natural understanding of gender. One might well ask, but why do we need so many theories? Since various theories focus on different aspects of our complex and sometimes contradictory social arrangements, a multiplicity of theories help us better to understand the nuisance, intricacies, and dynamics of societies. Before we conclude this unit, it would also be useful to problematize the idea of theory itself. To do theory is often understood as doing a difficult esoteric activity. In feminist discourse, theory is a much contested term. Are there some understandings that are non theoretical or naively theoretical? Is theory different from politics? Questions such as these continue to be posed and addressed. As one makes these distinctions, one must keep in mind the power relations that underpin these understandings. As you move on to the next unit, you must continue to be alert to how the theories of the theories that feed into and draw from feminist politics conceptualize gender. Thank you very much.